Hello and welcome to today's livecast. I'm Jamey from Stonemaier Games, and today is a newsletter day. So at times I might reference my other screen because I have the newsletter pulled up on there. Yeah, and if you didn't get that newsletter, it should be there should be a link in the description below of this video that you can check out. I've used some acronyms for the title of today's video, and I'll go over what those acronyms mean in a few minutes. A few of you are commenting about the CNN portion of it. And Garrett says he loves the shirt. Where did you snag that? This is a Catman shirt that I got for an event last year with some friends. There was a Batman themed party. I cannot remember where I got it. Somewhere on the internet. That is where I got this shirt. I don't know exactly where. Board Game Eric has a good question. I enjoyed Biddy's cameo. Good call identifying that as Biddy and not Walter in the CNN report. Did you pick the footage they used, or did they? Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about the CNN appearance because it was very interesting from behind the scenes for me. Because I'm pretty familiar with filming videos. I use StreamYard. I film videos for YouTube all the time, but this was and I've done like a lot of interviews and appearances on different platforms before. This was very different, and it was very nerve-wracking for some of these differences. To answer your question very briefly, Eric, the footage they used was actually kind of surprising. I thought I sent them a bunch of images for our games, or access to images of our games, and I thought they were just going to show images and do that thing where the camera kind of pans over an image, but they went deeper. I think either they went to our YouTube channel or they went to each game's page and used like the teaser trailer for it. I don't know. They were using, and it went beyond teaser trailer. So they just found a bunch of footage and used it on the appearance. And here's a question: where is the CNN appearance? I should clarify that. Yeah, if you want to link to it, look at my most recent blog post, and you'll see it there. That's the one about how do we fix this, I think is the title of that. And so I did not know, not only did I not know what footage they were using, and I was delighted when I saw that they did use the Biddy footage from about 10 years ago, but I couldn't see that footage. What I was looking at when I was filming the CNN appearance, and I guess I should back up even more. CNN reached out to me earlier that day and said, hey, Jamey, can you appear on Jake Tapper's CNN show for a few minutes this evening? And I said, yes. Absolutely. I was pretty nervous about it. But I said I thought it would be important to share what's going on with the tariffs and how they're impacting the board game industry right now. And so I said yes. And I popped on the show around, I think it was around 5:30 my time. And all that I could see when I got on the show was a screen with some instructions. I could see myself, I can see myself right now. I can see that. And then I saw a screen with some instructions saying like, hang out, you'll hear from us in a minute. And every now and then I would hear someone. I never saw anyone, and I never saw the footage they were showing on the screen. All I was looking at was myself and some instructions. But every now and then someone would pop on and say, hey, Jamey, good to see you. Is this how you pronounce your last name? Or we'll put you on in a few minutes. And I could hear the rest of the show being recorded. They had a guest go on before me to talk about COVID, a completely different subject. And so I could hear this, and I know they could see me, but I couldn't see them while they were talking to me. And I've realized in hindsight, I've tried to figure out why it was so nerve-wracking. And part of it is that when I am actively like having a conversation with someone else on an interview, you can use visual cues to see how they're responding, or at least to know that they've heard you, or that they're ready to say something, or that you're done speaking. But I didn't have any of those visual cues. I was essentially just talking to myself, which is fine. I talk to myself here on these videos, these live casts. And then they said, okay, Jamey, you're on, and you're going to have about 4 minutes. And so you need to be concise with your answers. You'll probably get around 4 questions. And that was, I think, what it ended up being. I have not rewatched it. I've shown it on my camera because I wanted to see Biddy. I heard the video appeared on it, but I can't rewatch myself, especially given how nervous I was for this. And Jake Tapper asked me a few questions, and I didn't know what the questions were in advance. That is usually okay with these interviews. I don't know what people are going to ask me, but I know the topics pretty well. But I think one of the other reasons I felt so nervous for the CNN appearance is that the message that I'm trying to convey, I feel is really, really important, both to me and to the board game industry. So I felt a lot of pressure to get all of that in, or try to get as much of that in 4 minutes. And I definitely didn't say everything I think I wanted to say. I wish I had stressed a little bit more how US of a company we are at Stonemaier Games, and that the global economy is also really important to us. So we're very much a US company, but we're here to serve people around the world, not just in the US. I wish I'd stressed that a little bit more, both for me and for other publishers. But I think I did get across the core message in the CNN appearance, which was that the most dire situation that's happening right now in the game industry with the 145% tariffs is that a lot of companies started making games before the tariffs even existed, or at least started preparing production for games before the tariffs existed. And now they're stuck somewhere in the production stage with games that they've heavily invested in, that they had planned to bring to the US and kind of need to bring to the US to sell or to fulfill crowdfunding campaigns. And now they can't do that without paying $14.50 for every $10 that they spent on manufacturing those games, which for us happens to be millions of dollars. And that's just for one print run of a bunch of different games that we started working on back in January. So that was the main thing I was focused on. Hopefully I got that message across and represented the game industry well, but it was really nerve-wracking and very interesting to see the final product. Like, what you see on your screen when you watch that CNN clip was not at all what I could see on my screen when I was recording it. And Chad asked a good question. What treat did you binge after the interview to come down? And come down is a good word. Like, my heart was pounding during that thing and afterward, because I was even like right afterward, I was like, I felt a little bit like I just blacked out and I don't know what I just said, but also I feel very nervous about what I just said. And I know I can't redo it. Like, this was live. This was a real thing. It's out there now. And I had a mocktail afterwards. Yeah, I made myself a mocktail right afterward. George says, are you going to add tariff costs to your site to each order as a separate line item? I haven't checked yet. Well, George, as of now, we have not received any products for which we've been charged tariffs, because Tokaido was right on the border. We did receive a small tariff charge for Tokaido, but that's one that will probably get refunded, and that was only a few $1,000s. So not too bad. The main tariff or cost will come when we start to receive these games that we started working on back in January. Reprints of Wormspan, Wingspan, Finspan. Finspan, we actually started a little bit later than that. And then Vantage. Vantage is the big one. So, George, what our plan is to do is once those games start arriving, and it'll be kind of a wave of games that arrive, probably looking at the timed along with the Vantage launch on our web store, that at checkout, if these 145% tariffs hold, at checkout, we'll add a gift card option at checkout for $14. And this is on the US store, only the US store. It won't impact prices or anything on non-US stores. But in the US store, we'll add a gift card option that costs $14.50. And so it is a gift card to the Stonemaier Games store that people can add to their cart if they want to help to cover this tariff cost. They can then use that gift card in the future if they want, or they can just use it as a way of offsetting the tariff cost. And a few of you have warned me about the accounting perils of gift cards. Our accountant is very much aware of it. And we pay sales taxes in a bunch of different states, so they're aware of how it impacts. That is the plan, George. Long answer for a short question. Tony says, have you heard from any other publishers on the interview? I have. It's a really, really supportive industry of each other. Like, we are struggling together right now in trying to figure this out. It's one of the reasons that I've tried to use my voice on platforms like that, on the Stonemaier Games blog, to talk about what we collectively are going through right now. I'm using Stonemaier Games as an example for a lot of it, but I have heard many things from other publishers, and the aspect of we're in this together has really come through. James Hudson, James is here from Druid City Games. Yeah, James has posted a lot about this subject, and yeah, thank you, James. You don't owe me an email. You don't owe me anything. Let's see. And I appreciate your kind words too about how that CNN appearance went. Yeah, I knew that I'd be a little bit nervous. I was surprised by how how it finally went. In fact, when I signed on to CNN to participate in the interview, I the format of it, what it looked like on the screen, almost looked like a call-in show. So at first I thought, oh, but are they just having me act as someone like I am calling into a call-in radio show kind of, but on camera? I had no idea. It was a very, very interesting format, and 4 minutes goes by fast. Steven says, how important has the financial support from the Champion program been for Stonemaier Games employees during these uncertainties? If tariffs are long-term, would you change it? I'd support more. Thank you, Steven, for saying that. That's very generous of you. I am trying to serve my coworkers and to serve my customers in this struggle against the tariffs. And I'm trying my best not to increase prices. And my coworkers, I think the best way I can say it is I never want to hire someone if there's the possibility that I would ever need to lay them off. And I think that probably resonates with a lot of companies. Like I don't think most people hire other people thinking, oh, someday I might need to lay you off if things aren't going well. But I really mean that. It's one of the reasons that I've been so slow to expand Stonemaier Games. I didn't want to rush into a company with 20 employees because for every person you add, there is, I think, a greater risk that if the shape of the company changes over time, that you might have to lay someone off. And I really don't want to do that. I want to protect my coworkers. I want to protect their livelihoods. I want to be there for them in the short term and the long term, and not just in terms of money, in many different ways, but I guess in terms of their income. And you're talking financial support here. So the consistency of the Champion program and having people who consistently support us has been really, really helpful. And it helps that we aren't reliant on just one revenue stream. We have a fairly diversified revenue stream through localization partners, distributors, retailers, direct sales on our web store, and a little bit on Amazon too. That diversity is really helping us tread water, as I said on the CNN interview right now. And thank you, Elizabeth. That's so kind of you. Elizabeth says, don't be scared to watch it. I am scared to watch it. I genuinely do not like listening to even though I'm talking right now, listening to myself talk. I don't like rewatching myself talk on video or podcasts, but I probably should do so anyway sometimes so I can be aware of how many times I use words like or how often I use my hands when I'm talking, things like that. So maybe I'll get the courage to do that, Elizabeth. And Matt says, thanks for the Panda shout out. And yeah, thanks, Matt. Panda has been an incredible partner for us for the last 13 years. And I really hope to continue that partnership for a long time. It's been one of the most painful parts of this whole tariff situation because I really value that partnership. And hearing people say, oh, you should just find someone else in the US, it's like saying, okay, I've had a relationship with Panda for 13 years. I am not quick to give up on that. That's not how I consider partnerships and relationships. Let's see here. Scootman says, you mentioned that you're involved in a very supportive industry. Do you support the growing trend of boycotting known as MAGA designers, publishers, content creators? I don't know if I know specifically what you're referring to. But I would say in general, boycotting is not something that I support. I get it. I don't know if I do get it. For me, if I have a bad experience with a company, say I go to a local restaurant, I have a bad experience with that restaurant. Unless I think that restaurant is going to actively hurt other people, I don't broadcast that I had a terrible experience with that restaurant. I might talk about it a little bit in hopefully a constructive way. In fact, I think I did a recent blog post about noise, like the volume in restaurants. But I'm not trying to bash those restaurants. I was actually saying really nice things about those restaurants too. But for me, if I have a really bad experience at a restaurant, instead of boycotting them publicly, I just don't go back to that restaurant. So in general, I would say, unless someone is actively hurting other people, that boycotting isn't something that I pursue or condone. Paul Grogan is here. Hey, Paul, popping in to say hi, but currently sitting in a car showroom awaiting for the salesman to come back. Well, that's exciting, Paul. Hopefully you have some fun car options to consider there. Tinklar says, in the newsletter, I saw that you've been playing Molly House. Did you experience a lot of joy? And I love in Molly House that the core thing that you're pursuing in the game is joy. You're trying to have gather joy, like it is a resource in the game, essentially victory points. I've only played it once. I played it last week at game night, and I had a great time doing it. I lost miserably in the end, but not miserably. I lost with plenty of joy at the end of the game. And I have a video coming out about that soon. Another game that I played recently, in fact, I played a lot of really good things recently. Just yesterday, I played a game called Here Lies. I read a review on Space Biff. That's space-biff.com, a great reviewer, very talented writer. And he wrote such a great review about this cooperative game with limited communication, limited interaction, or limited information. That I picked up a copy right away and played it yesterday and had a delightful time with it. You're basically solving a mystery with other players, or one player knows all the answers to that mystery, and they are communicating with you, and you are communicating with that player through kind of a hodgepodge of limited communication mechanisms. Like, I think the best example of this is maybe Mysterium, where one player knows how this murder happened, and they're trying to communicate with other players through visuals, through these beautifully illustrated cards. There's a little bit of that in Here Lies, but there's also a lot of other ways to communicate in subtle ways. An example, actually, that we never got to use in our games is, as an investigator, I could have told my friend who knew all the case details, I could have said, I want you to draw something with your finger in the air, like just draw something in the air, and that is your clue that you are giving me about the weapon or the cause of death in the mystery that we were trying to solve. Really, really cool game. That's Here Lies that we just played the other day. I also played Mall Cop, which was a really fun 2-player hidden movement game. I have a video coming out about that soon. And one of the acronyms in this post is BP. I'm not referring to the petroleum company. I'm referring to Blueprints, a digital game about tile placement and using your eyes to unravel some mysteries about this mansion that you're exploring. And every time you explore the mansion, it starts over from scratch, and you're filling it with tiles as you walk into a new room. You get a tile, get a new room that you place down inside this mansion to become that room. I filmed a video about it last year from the demo version of it, but I'm loving it so much that I filmed another video specifically about the tile placement and the clever tile design or room design, because I thought that might be useful for some game designers working on tile placement games. What else have I been playing? I think that was it. Mall Cop, yeah. Yeah, those are the games that I've been playing. What have you all been playing lately? And actually, let's see. Do I have a question of the day today? Usually I try to prepare a question, but I don't know if I have one right off the cuff. Maybe I'll think of one later. Let's say Glitter M says, did you get any good submissions on your search for a small box or card game? Yeah, we're looking for a game in the vein of like a So Clover, Blob Party, Caution Signs, probably cooperative game that scales from around 2 to 8 players that you can teach the rules just by looking at the back of the box. That sort of game. We're looking for that sort of game, and we have gotten a few good submissions. Even just the other day, we got a few more. So we're probably getting some more samples in to test them out. So we haven't accepted one yet, but we have seen some really, really good options. Lori, thanks for asking about this. Yeah, Lori says, what is the Champion Program? And I'm sorry for saying that as if everyone knows what that is. The Champion Program is a way for people to pay an annual fee. I believe it's $15 right now. Might be $20. I think, no, it's $15. $15 annually to support the content that we create at Stonemaier Games, the 2 blog posts I write every week, and now I almost do 1 video a day for the YouTube channel. And in return, you get 20% off everything that you buy on the Stonemaier Games web store for that entire year, starting on the day that you sign up. So, Lori, if you wanted to buy something from Stonemaier Games today, you could put that item that you want to buy in your cart, and then you could also put the Champion membership in your cart for $15. And for that item and for all purchases for the next year, you'll save 20%. Oftentimes, this ends up meaning that, like when Vantage is released, it launches in a few months. If you put that Champion membership in your cart, you are going to be saving more than the $15 that you spend, most likely, on Vantage, even just by adding it into your cart. But I understand that some people don't like subscription programs. But yeah, I think most people benefit if they are going to buy a few things from Stonemaier Games over the course of the year. They benefit from signing up for this program. Let's see. I'm just scrolling through looking for questions right now. Oh, let's talk about the last acronym here. I'm seeing some very supportive posts and comments here, and I really appreciate that. So I mentioned CNN, mentioned BP, Blueprints. Nota stands for none of the above. It is a speakeasy bar here in St. Louis. And it actually is one of the places I'm referring to that we went to recently and had a great experience in terms of the company and the drinks. But it was very, very loud. I wish it hadn't been so loud so we weren't like shouting over each other. It isn't usually like that at Nota. I would still recommend going to none of the above here in St. Louis if you're ever visiting. But the thing that we did that I thought was a little fun, and I posted about this on Instagram, was at Nota, they have a ton of really interesting drinks that you can try. They have some mocktails that's mainly focused on cocktails. And the thing that you can do that is none of the above is that they have a small 9-question survey that you can fill out indicating your cocktail preferences. Like, do you like it sweet? Do you like it sour? Do you like it tart? Do you like it floral? It's a 9-question survey that you can fill out, and you can give it to the bartender, and they will create a drink for you based on your preferences. And just for fun, I was with all gamers at this table. I brought up the idea of, okay, what if we draft this cocktail? What if we make one cocktail together and we draft the categories? So I'm going to mark one category, my preference for one category. I'll pass it around the table, and the next person will mark a different category, and so on around the table until we had filled in all 9 categories. And the drink took a while. I think they saw that we were enjoying the other cocktails that we were enjoying. And when it finally came out, it was a small glass of green liquid. You can see a photo of it on Instagram if you want. And our first sips made us think that it was a Chicago liqueur called Malort. If you've ever been to Chicago, you may have been subjected to Malort. But it wasn't Malort. It was actually some other substance called, I think, Suze Plus. And it had like these cucumber notes to it. Anyway, it was a fun little experiment to do, to have a bartender to create a collective drink that we collectively designed at this Nota place. Hence the acronym in this title. And yeah, I agree. James has a good point here. James says, I appreciate your measured response to all this. I think that people that need to hear how our industry works and the reality we're facing are more likely to listen to your approach. Fighting propaganda and disinformation is exhausting. I agree, James. And there was one article in particular recently that has some key misinformation about the tariffs that has been spread far and wide for some reason. And that's really discouraging when someone acts like they know what they're talking about to seemingly actively damage the board game industry for reasons that I can't pretend to understand. But I can say with 100% certainty that the tariffs currently on board game exports from China into the US are 145%. So for every $10 that we spent making a game in China, we have to pay $14.50 to get that game into the US. And that applies to games that we started making even before the tariffs existed, which for us at Stonemaier Games happens to be quite a large quantity of games. Gary says, I was curious about your take on this. What's your opinion on partnering with influencers for making your board game? Thanks, Gary, for that question. Interesting question. I did a blog post about that somewhat recently, or this general topic about, I think it was called like Instagram famous. So not necessarily for influencers, but for brands that just have a huge following on Instagram. And every now and then one of them reaches out to me and says, hey, we've cultivated this following of 1 million different people who like our cartoon character on Instagram. Would you be open to making a game with us? And in general, for us at Stonemaier Games, that isn't something that we are interested in pursuing. But the blog post touches upon the subject and kind of welcomes publishers or designers who are interested in working with those types of companies to let them know that they're available. I have heard from enough of these companies or enough of these influencers, as you say, that I wanted to have some information to give them that was more solid than, no, I'm not interested, but probably other people are. So yeah. Matt's also playing Blueprints. Day 100, Matt. Wow. I think I'm like day 12 right now. Tried to limit it to 1 run a day. Carol says, what was the last crowdfunding project you got in? Have you played it yet? Have you backed anything new recently? I think the most recent thing that I backed was the Earth Abundance expansion. And actually, one of the most recent games that I played was the other Earth expansion. No, I've played Earth Abundance, whatever the one is that's on crowdfunding right now, the new Earth expansion. That is probably, I think, the most recent project that I backed. But the most recent game that I bought and played was Here Lies, that I bought right after reading that Space Biff review. This wasn't crowdfunded, though. So yeah, I think Earth was maybe the most recent crowdfunding game that I received. What about you, Carol? Have you received anything recently? I see some other people speaking about Blueprints. Garrett and Allie. Garrett, I hope you're still feeling better. I got to room 46 on day 20. So that is one of the goals of the game. Fill up this mansion with rooms and get to room 46. This is a lot more difficult than it sounds because the rooms only have a certain number of exits and entrances. So it's very common, I think, to end a run because you've kind of blocked yourself in. You have no way to get out from the room. And Garrett says he still feels like he's only seen 25% of the game, despite having essentially won the game now. That's really cool, Garrett. I'm curious and excited to see if I can get to that point. And Joshua says, oh, this is interesting. I love that rooms and blueprints work differently depending on where you place them, and some only appear in certain locations. That is really cool. Yeah. I'm still grasping fully what that means. Yeah. Let's see. Edward says, have you pursued any game ideas based off your semi-recent trip to Japan? So did the trip inspire any game ideas? Edward, the main thing that trip inspired, so I had this moment where I visited the Yellow Submarine shop, or a Yellow Submarine game shop in Tokyo, and I saw many of our games on the shelves. Happy to see them there. And then I looked at the best-selling game shelf in this game store, and it was a small shelf, and every single game on it was about this big or smaller. There's a tiny little, I don't know if you can tell, there's a tiny little game box. And so it was a great reminder to me of the value of packing a lot of value in a small box, especially for people who don't have a giant gaming table. So that was inspiring to me. And I think we do have a few games, not a few games. We have at least one game in the works that will fit into a smaller box like that. Alina Cassette, one of the Mr. Cuddington team of amazing illustrators that I've had the pleasure of working with. Good to hear from you, Alina. Played Gris recently. It was beautiful. I want to try Blueprints next when I get a bit more free time. I think I've played a little bit of Gris, and I agree it is really, really beautiful. I'm glad you had a good experience with it. Mark's working on a game. Very exciting, Mark. Mark has been very active in creating fan-designed realms and some realms that we published for Rolling Realms. So, Mark, I'm curious to see what you create. Chet says, how would you describe your design style back when you made viticulture compared to your style of designing now? I would say I'm much better informed now as a designer. I'm aware of many, many more games. Where back when I was playing viticulture, I had only played a few modern games. I was aware of more than I had played, but how has the design style changed? That's a good question. I would say the thing that I am most aware of is how much I appreciate when a game flows well from turn to turn. And as you can probably tell in a lot of my games, I try not to use a round structure. I am okay with using it if it is right for the game, but I generally approach a game without a round structure in mind. That is, without saying, okay, this game is going to be 5 rounds, and then the game is over, and that's what this game is. There are exceptions. Tapestry is a game with a limited number of rounds, or the round doesn't restrict the players as to like when the round ends. It ends at different times for different players. But I would say that's the main thing that I've become more aware of over time, and that I was aware of after viticulture. The idea that a game does not have to be broken down into rounds to be successful, I guess. Let's see. Board Games, James says, will you shift your influencer program to favor more non-USA participants? That's an interesting way that you phrase that question, because we send our games to reviewers around the world. Like our reviewer list has many different countries on it, and I wouldn't say that list is catered towards any specific country. Anyone who fits our guidelines, which are not based on a certain region, can sign up for our reviewer program. That is not something that I particularly think about. There's certainly a few countries that we can't ship to because we've had a high instance of those games simply not arriving. But we have fulfillment centers around the world. We have them in Canada, Europe, the US, and in Australia. And so we send a lot of review copies around the world, not just to the US already. Yeah. Thomas, thank you for popping in. I appreciate you sharing information about the tariff situation in the Board Game Revolution board game group. Jeffrey says he is excited for Vantage. Thank you. Do you know if you'll have the game shipped directly to the Canadian warehouse instead of from the US first? Jeffrey, yeah, thanks for asking about that. Yeah, for the last decade plus, our method of shipping around the world has been that we make our games with Panda in China, and then we ship those games directly to fulfillment centers and directly to distributors in each region. So we ship directly from China to Canada directly, and then we ship, when you place an order for a game that we have in stock, we ship it from Canada to within Canada. So we have those fulfillment centers in Canada, the US, Europe, and Australia. Things aren't routed through the US. They go directly from China to those fulfillment centers. Super Keener says, do you have a general time management strategy that you always try to implement both in private and professional ways? That's a good question. I think the main thing that I do in terms of time management is that I actually don't know if I have a great answer to that. My day has patterns to it, but in terms of specifically how I use my time in different ways, I don't know if I have a real set system. I just have a work day. My work day is generally, it starts around 7 o'clock when Walter, my cat, wakes me up, and I work. I take a little break to work out, but I work from 7 to 11, and then I take a lunch break, and then I work from 11:45 to 6 o'clock. I'd say the one thing I do, and then take a dinner break, usually for a couple hours, and then from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock is oftentimes my most creative time of the day, when I have time for creative stuff. And I would say the one thing that I do to compartmentalize the time a little bit is that I love when people want to talk to me, interviews, podcasts, things like that. But I've learned that I don't want to do that outside of business hours and on weekends. I want my nighttime and my weekends to be more flexible for personal time, and a lot more flexible and a lot more focused on creative time, working on game design specifically. So that is one. I guess that's one thing I learned over time. Is that one thing where I didn't realize it, but it was kind of bothering me whenever I'd say yes to an interview that happened at 9:30 at night. And so I shifted all of that to happen during the day instead. Insane Anarium says, if you could have your name on the box of any game that already exists, which one would be your dream to publish? That's an interesting question. Because recently I've been talking about revisiting a video that I did a few years ago about games that we would have published, or not that we would have published, but games that we could have published because they fit into the Stonemaier guidelines, games published over the last 5 years. I don't know if I would necessarily put my name on the box, but put Stonemaier Games on the box. There are certainly a few games that will come up in that list. I guess a few that come to mind are Earth, Planet Unknown, and Forest Shuffle, are 3 games that I both really love and that happen to fit the Stonemaier Games design ethos and design guidelines. Yeah. Okay. Here's a related question to that. Board Game James says, you mentioned previously one aspect of Stonemaier Games is that it must support up to 5 players. So our games are generally 1 to 5 players. That's a part of our guidelines. What other aspects define a Stonemaier game? They're on our submission page. So I can go off the top of my head, but I'll just read them out loud a little bit. I realize I haven't actually shown the newsletter yet. I'll have to flip over and talk about the newsletter in a second. But if you go to our website and look at our submission guidelines, some of the things that we look for, other than the player count, are we're looking for tabletop games, not RPGs. We're looking for games that capture our imaginations. We typically look for event games, games that are the meat of the game night. So typically the games that take at least 45 minutes to play. Because we look for higher player count games, we do look for games that often have quick, simple turns, so there's not a lot of downtime between games. We look for games to have a core hook to them, both a mechanical and a component hook, so something that draws people to the game. So generally, even though I mentioned Forest Shuffle there, Forest Shuffle does have the hook. Even though Forest Shuffle is a cards-only game, it has the hook within those cards of cards that are top, bottom, or they're split cards, split vertically or horizontally. I mentioned earlier, we look for games that flow really well. That's really important. And then there's some other guidelines, like if you submit a game to us, we want you to have play tested it quite a bit. We're not just looking for an idea, we're looking for execution, things like that. Stuart says, Stonemaier doesn't seem to do dark, gritty themes aside from arguably Scythe. Has this been a conscious choice? Do you see Stonemaier ever doing a game with a more dark, serious theme or setting? It is possible. It isn't something that we exclude from our submission guidelines. Generally, I gravitate less towards the dark, serious themes compared to things that are a little bit more whimsical. I think that's partially personal, but it isn't out of the realm of possibility. But that is a good observation on your part. Garrett says, I've really been enjoying your podcast with Mitchell. I do have a podcast now that's both on our YouTube channel and available on places like Spotify and iTunes. Garrett says, do you think he would ever be up for making an appearance on the livecast? Would love to say hi and ask a question or two. I think Mitchell loves to talk, and so Mitchell might want. I don't know. I'll ask Mitchell if he wants to appear on the livecast for a few minutes sometime in the future. That would be fun. I have enjoyed the rare occasions that designers are able to pop onto the livecast when we're talking about a new game. That's always been a lot of fun. Justin says, a few weeks ago, you mentioned that you once worked on a game themed on Frank Lloyd Wright's architecture. Is there any chance you'd revisit it? Sounds like an incredible theme for a game. I mean, there are other games that have come out about building houses or designing houses. I've played some. I haven't played others. I guess someday I could revisit that theme. I do. From my childhood, I was fascinated by Frank Lloyd Wright's architecture. And for a while, I thought, I want to be an architect. I want to design buildings and houses. I am not detail-oriented enough to do that, not even close. But I do still love Frank Lloyd Wright architecture. If you ever come to St. Louis, there was a Frank Lloyd Wright house here in St. Louis that you can check out. I don't know if I'll revisit that. Maybe. Every now and then I go back through like old games that I worked on a little bit and didn't end up publishing. And I thought about actually doing a video about some of those games too, because it shows that a lot of games that we start working on or that I start working on don't ever end up being published. And that's okay. I'm still learning from that process. George says, do you skip breakfast? George, good question. In my schedule, I eat breakfast while I start working. Usually my breakfast is a bowl of instant oatmeal and a little bit of coffee. I have usually about half a cup of coffee a day. Actually, that answers Nolan's question, coffee or tea. I don't really drink tea, but I do enjoy about half a cup of coffee a day. And right now, my little treat here is that one of my favorite places to get coffee in St. Louis is a place called Grand Army Farm at the local farmers market. And Rosalie there makes really delicious Vietnamese coffee. And so I get Rosalie's Vietnamese coffee and often use it as essentially kind of like a creamer throughout the week until the next farmer's market, and then I get more Vietnamese coffee. Jeffrey says, is there a mechanism that you came up with in one of your designs that you are most proud of? I'm proud of a lot of mechanisms that I've incorporated into my games. What's a recent one? Here, I'll talk about Vantage. Well, no, because you all don't have the context for Vantage yet. One that came up recently in a conversation, someone is learning Scythe and about to teach their group Scythe or do a teach and play with their group. And one thing about Scythe that I really like is that all the resources that you've gathered are kept within the map. They aren't kept in your own personal supply. So they are vulnerable. If I produce some food, if I produce some wood, it is kept on the map under my control, hopefully so that I can spend it, but also it's vulnerable for other players to get. So I thought that was a pretty neat twist in Scythe that I don't I'm sure it exists in some other games, but I haven't seen it very often. Sandy says, any plans for an expansion for Stamp Swap or Libertalia? Keep up the great work. Thank you, Sandy. We do have a little mini expansion for Libertalia, a promo pack of new tiles, but I considered it kind of a pretty complete game out of the gate. It's a tough one to add characters to because the characters are already numbered 1 through 40. And Stamp Swap, currently we don't have plans for an expansion, but I'm open to it. There is room in the box for one at least. Kevin says, are there any update for upgrades, expansions for Apiary? I absolutely love the game and the worker upgrade mechanism. Kevin, good news there, and you may already be aware of it, but just in case you aren't, an expansion for Apiary actually did come out around 6 months ago. It's called Apiary Expanding the Hive. I don't have it handy here, but there is an expansion to Apiary. If you're loving Apiary, check it out. And also, Apiary recently went into alpha on Board Game Arena, where we don't put expansions for our games, but we do put the core games after they've been out for a few years. And yeah, I'm kind of excited about that, about Apiary appearing there. Chet says, what's your everyday carry? There's a trend list out to list out everything you typically carry throughout your day: phone, wallet, watch, pencil, key ring, knife, etc. Any special unique items you love to use? Yeah, I do kind of. I don't know about you all, but I do a pocket check when I leave the house. What are the things in my pockets? And those things generally are my phone, my chapstick, my wallet, and my keys. Those are the 4 things that I carry with me to most places. Yeah. Let's see. Incendiarium has, have you ever heard, and I know I don't read all the comments out loud, but I do read all of them to myself. So I'm seeing all your comments. Thank you for the comments. But I do put the questions on the screen. Have you ever had a game idea that revolves around a big centerpiece component like Return to Dark Tower? Definitely a pretty big dramatic centerpiece in Return to Dark Tower. I mean, I do like having a component hook on the table. We have the bird feeder dice tower in Wingspan. Oftentimes the board is that centerpiece, but something that is vertical. I do a little bit less of that because it can impede your ability to see things from across the table if it's blocking things. But I would say most of our games, the board is the centerpiece. I'm trying to think of anything else like that in other games of ours. But the bird feeder dice tower might be the best example of that I can think of right now. Greg says, looking forward to Geekway to the West and the opportunity to play Cosmoctopus and or Finca with you. I'm happy to play both of them with you, Greg. Do you have any advice, suggestions on how to meet up anytime it's already blocked off? Generally, Greg, I kind of float. You probably said, I think you saw this last year. I float from game to game a lot throughout Geekway. I try not to schedule out my game too much, or my game schedules too much, so that I'm not like feeling like I'm rushing through one game to get to the next. But I don't think I've actually scheduled anything yet, but the only time that I do schedule things is when I arrive, and I typically arrive at Geekway around 11:30. So maybe we could work on, you can email me, contact me through the blog, and we can find one of the days at 11:30 that we can say, okay, we'll meet here at this time. I can be there. We'll play this game at that time. That's the easiest way to do it. Thank you, Melissa, for playing APR on Board Game Arena and Alpha. That I think that testing really, really helps. I might actually try to play on tonight at virtual game night tonight if we have the chance. Rolling Reggie mentions Decision Space. Thank you, Reggie, for mentioning this. Yeah, I had the pleasure of recording with Jake and Pete on the Decision Space podcast last week about limited communication and limited information cooperative games. My favorite type of cooperative game. It is the type of game that Vantage is. And Reggie, I'm glad you like that too. Do you have a favorite limited communication or limited information cooperative game? What else is going on? This weekend, we had a friend come to town, and she was celebrating her 40th birthday. And to celebrate, she recreated what she did in some ways on her 30th birthday, which was a bar crawl throughout the Soulard area in St. Louis, which is where the second biggest Mardi Gras celebration in the country takes place. Mardi Gras was not this past weekend. It was a much more low-key weekend in Soulard, but it was fun for someone, especially for someone who doesn't drink much anymore, that being me, to see a bunch of friends, including this friend who was celebrating her birthday, try to recreate the magic of the 30th birthday on 10 years later on her 40th birthday. Recent blog posts have been about a lot about the tariffs, a lot about that subject. And I have a note to myself about media and game pairings. What was this note? Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I meant to lead off with this. I should have led off with this. But Jeff mentioned last week that I haven't done my top 3s in a while, and I wanted to, I'll have to save this because I meant to lead off with a certain topic that I will save for a future week. We'll do that in a future week. What else is going on? Newsletter. Let's look over the newsletter real quick to see if I missed anything. Again, this is found in the description of the video if you missed it. I have a little note about Geekway to the West. If you are attending Geekway to the West in May, it's a convention here in St. Louis. Please say hi to me or play a game with me. I'd love to see you. I'd love to play a game with you. And I apologize in advance if I already know you and I go a little like face blind at Geekway because my brain is on overcharge trying to remember a ton of faces and a ton of names. So please say hi. If it feels like I don't recognize you, you might be my best friend and I don't recognize you at Geekway because my brain is a little overloaded there. So please say hi and let me know who you are, especially since you'll be wearing a name tag at Geekway. Also, Tokaido is having its retail release. It had its local retail release on Friday, and then on May 9th, next Friday, it'll have its online game release. Also talked about, it was a pretty low-key newsletter. I have some various updates here about back-in-stock products. I always link to the most recent newsletters for each of our games. If there was news to share, I put out a newsletter for it. You can see the project and progress chart, making some progress on certain games. I added the Wingspan fan design bird packs. If you don't have the context for that, we are working with some fan designers who have already created and heavily tested packs of cards that they designed. So this would be the first time that we release some cards for Wingspan that weren't designed by Elizabeth Hargrave. It's supported by Elizabeth, but not designed by her while she's focusing on the next expansion. And so we are working on these packs right now. I'll release details when we have more of them, but they're moving along pretty quickly. So you might see them. I think there's a very good chance that you will see them in 2025. And then down here at the end of the video, there's some fun stuff about articles, videos, the mill, the Positively Board Gaming podcast, if you're curious about the podcast. And also, very recently, we filmed a round of disc golf with Disc Up Disc Golf channel, and they posted 2 videos about it. I have linked to the video where I throw better than the first video. I have a few ace runs in this video. I didn't get an ace, but I have a few ace runs if you want to watch this video and see my very odd throwing style in disc golf. Aaron mentions that Sue Lord is where she gets all of her parking tickets. I think I avoided that. Yeah, I don't think I got a parking ticket, fortunately, while I was there. Jay Zargo is going to their first board game convention, Gen Con. Oh, that's you're going to the deep end there. Yeah, I found that I prefer these more low-key conventions where you're just going to play games for a few days, which you can do at Gen Con, but it is so much bigger than these big game conventions. Joshua says, have you played further in Iridia the Paths We Dare Tread, or do you want to? Last I remember, you tried a solo session or 2 and enjoyed it. I did enjoy the tutorial session of Iridia. I have not played more of it since then, but it was not for lack of enjoyment of that tutorial session. Mark also said that he's loving Blueprints. I see Decorum and Sky Team as Reggie's picks for great limited communication cooperative games. And I see Jeffrey mentioned that same thing too. Yeah, some great picks for that style of game. What else is going on here? Jeffrey says, one more question. What combination of expansions do you use when you play Wingspan? I find all of them to be too many cards. Curious what you find is the sweet spot. My method is, actually, I play Wingspan. I don't play it often enough that I really need to do this. But generally, in my nesting box, I have just big chunks of cards, everything shuffled in together. I don't have them separated by expansions, just big chunks of cards. And if I remember to do it properly the previous time I played, I typically separate the cards from the last time I played from the other cards, and the next time I play with the other cards. It's a lot to shuffle when you have all the cards, but I do have all of them just shuffled together, and I just pull out a big chunk of cards when we play with that chunk of cards. But for people who play a lot of Wingspan, my general recommendation is to keep everything shuffled together, but play with the cards that you didn't play with the previous time until you get to the point that you play through everything, then you shuffle everything back together and start that process over again. The one twist is that I don't play with Nectar. I generally do not play with Nectar for reasons that I will actually talk about in an upcoming video. I do a video about expansions, all the Stonemaier Games expansions that I filmed yesterday. It'll be a little while before that video actually comes out. What was my video this past weekend? Let's see if I have a note about that. Yeah, I don't know if anyone remembers that. What was my video from Sunday? It was about, my top 10 favorite games with closed drafting. That's when you get a little bit of like secret information, usually cards, sometimes tiles like in Between Two Cities, Between Two Castles, or even meeples like in Draftosaurus. And you pick one or two of them, or dice sometimes too. And then you pass them to the next player. I guess it doesn't fully have to be private, but it often is. Like Sushi Roll is not private, even though it is a closed drafting game. Wendy's playing one of my favorite games from last year, The Gang. This is a cooperative poker game with limited communication, a very specific type of communication in The Gang. I'm glad you're enjoying it, Wendy. Ooh, Garrett got very close with a near ace with a special Stonemaier disc. It hit the chains and bounced out. Was even filming it would have been epic. Oh, I want to see that film, Garrett. Post that somewhere. That's awesome. Hit the chains with a Stonemaier disc. Yeah, I always want to hear if anyone has a great shot in disc golf with a Stonemaier Games disc. I want to see it. I want to see a photo of it, a video of it, post it on Instagram and tag me. I always want to see that and celebrate that. What else is going on? We've been watching a lot of fun things recently. Been watching Top Chef, Survivor, the show Elsbeth, Ghost is our lunchtime show. I just started watching The Rehearsal, the new season of The Rehearsal, which looks to be wild. I saw the first episode of Black Mirror, the new season of Black Mirror, and we watched the sequel to the movie Den of Thieves. And first movie was okay. The second movie was a really great heist movie, Den of Thieves, Pantera, I think it was called. I have a somber note to end on. So actually, I don't want to end on the somber note. I want to celebrate someone who unfortunately recently passed away, someone who has had a huge impact on the board gaming community, specifically in Amsterdam. Lise Sprout. She is someone who, I don't know if she started it, but she has been the coordinator for a group called Amsterdice for like 20 or 30 years, a big group of people who get together, I believe on a weekly basis, maybe a monthly basis, and play games together. And Lise and I have been in touch over many years now, since starting Stonemaier Games, for us to help contribute to Amsterdice. Lise supporting our games through the games that she has brought to Amsterdice. And Lise over the last year has been fighting against cancer, and cancer got the better of her a few days ago. And I want to celebrate her. I try to, when someone special passes away, I while there is grief, and that's good and normal and healthy, I also want to celebrate them because Lise, she was pretty incredible. So fortunately I had the chance to, I knew Lise was that her health was going downhill. I didn't know it would happen that quickly, but I reached out to her a few days in advance before it ended, and I let her know how much she meant to me. And yeah, I just wanted to celebrate her today, and I'm glad I had the chance to tell her that too. That this wasn't something that only happens after the fact that she can't hear. I'm glad that I had the chance to tell her that over email. Anyway, I wanted to end with a celebration. We're not quite on the end yet. We have a few minutes left, but I wanted to celebrate Lise a little bit. I mentioned CNN in the title of today's video. Also, I had the chance to have a chat with the New York Times. The New York Times had an article on Sunday a little bit about the board gaming industry. And BBC, if you listen to BBC, you may have heard me very briefly appear on a BBC show with a reporter named Roger. That was a radio show, a video or a podcast. And also had a great chat with 5 Game, Ben, I believe, at 5 Games for Doomsday. He's been interviewing a lot of people about the tariffs. That was really helpful. And had a good chat with a reporter from the AP, Associated Press. We actually had a long chat, much longer than I thought, but in a good way. And so hopefully there will be a really good article coming out soon about what publishers are facing right now with these tariffs. And there was one other chat. I had a chat yesterday. Great chat with, I'm going to blank on the name here, but it was a chat with Mark and Mark's podcast. I'll share it when I have a link to it. Garrett says, are there any charities that they support that we contribute to in her honor? I would honestly say, Lisa's passion was was Amsterdice, this board game group. And I don't know if the group needs support. I think they often, it's the type of group where they buy games and they share it with their group here and then the library there. But you could search for Amsterdice and see if they are accepting anything on behalf of these. Yeah, again, I want to celebrate Lee's. She donated her entire game collection to Amsterdice upon her death. And I think she had already given a lot of games to them anyway. So, yeah. Insane Anarium says, I keep stumbling over your name. Have you ever thought about creating a focused deck list for Wingspan to guide specific gameplay styles, kind of like it works in Dale of Merchants? That's really interesting. That's a really clever idea that I would love to see some fans create and foster. It isn't something that I thought about creating. I just like to shuffle everything together and play. But it is a really interesting idea there. I think I have floated in the past the idea of playing constructed Wingspan, where players can come to the game having constructed a specific deck of cards that they are pulling from. It doesn't entirely work with Wingspan because players are drawing from a center row of cards, and that interaction is pretty important for Wingspan, one of the forms of player interaction in the game. But to have a shared deck, kind of like a Magic cube, the cube format of Magic, where you're all using that same deck. It's interesting. I don't know if it really fully caters to what Wingspan is, because you're developing your style of play and building different little engines as you play based on the cards that you choose to draw and cards you choose to play. But it could be an interesting experiment. And if you want to give it a try, share it in the Wingspan group. Darian, thank you. Mark and Scott at Board All the Time. Board All the Time is the name of the podcast. Thank you, Darian, for reminding me of that. But yeah, I just chatted with Mark and Scott yesterday. They had some great questions about the tariffs. And maybe the podcast is live already. I don't know if it is. Darren, if you know about it, maybe it is. And Arrowwind says, hopefully bringing more awareness about how the tariffs are impacting more than just the big companies will let folks know the sudden shift in global policy impacts the average citizen so much. It really does. Hopefully that is part of the message that or that is part of the message that I'm putting out there. Hopefully people are hearing it, that this isn't just about the big companies. This is about a lot of small companies. And Stonemaier Games, I have 7 coworkers, 8 employees at Stonemaier Games. So we are a mid-sized company. A lot of these publishers are just 1 or 2 people. And they just want to bring their games to the US to support them. And I know the counter is, oh, why didn't they make those games in the US? That is a whole different topic. It's a relevant topic, but it is a whole other topic, and it is somewhat irrelevant right now for any game that has already been produced in China or production is already in process. We've already invested in these games, oftentimes starting that production before the tariffs even existed, and we just now want to bring those games into the US so we can sell them. And one of the points I made in the most recent blog post was, if for those Americans who want more manufacturing in the US, and again, that is a nuanced topic too. We are a multifaceted company that supports a broad variety of different people and independent contractors and fulfillment centers and coworkers. Doesn't have to all be about manufacturing, but if that is something that you believe strongly in, the companies that are going to support that manufacturing are the ones that survive these tariffs. And currently we are in survival mode. And so if you want more companies to continue to exist who could even potentially support US manufacturing, we need to get the games that we've already invested in here to the US so that we can sell them and have funds and not dip so far into our cash reserves, if we even have cash reserves, to invest in that type of manufacturing. So the tariffs, the current tariffs and how they were applied on goods that were even already in production before the tariffs existed, they are directly getting in the way of any goal that could be possible about increasing and expanding US manufacturing. Jacob says, I love the rule pop for Wingspan and Sleeping Gods. Is there anything in the works for Apiary, Vantage, and others to be added? I'm glad you love that. Yeah, I actually just heard from Jans yesterday. Just a general, he was popping in to say hi. He's the one behind Rule Pop. And it's the type of thing where if a lot of people are using it, then I am happy to continue to support it. It does cost, it's an investment for us to put something on Rule Pop. But if I know people are using it, we are happy to put more of our games on there, especially if it's a game that really, really benefits from having Rule Pop available. Caleb points out that the problem is somehow even worse, the tariff problem, even worse in the tech industry. Yes, we can manufacture PCBs in the US, but the cost is so much higher than the products built from those components, quadruple in price. And Caleb, yeah, I agree. The problem is widespread, not just in the tabletop industry. And I also would say it's not just about price. I think that is oftentimes the focus, but it's also sometimes about scope and scalability. I could find a local woodworker to make a meeple, but can I find a local woodworker to make 20,000 meeples? And the molds are a big issue too. We create molds to make like custom dice, to make miniatures, things like that. The mold cost in the US is a lot higher than China. Like they're very good at making molds, and that therefore they're very good at making a wide variety of products very quickly. So yeah. And Caleb is hearing something unfortunate here. Caleb says, I keep hearing folks says, well, these are going to fail anyway. They were poorly run. But what folks fail to see is that a lot of these companies are passionate hobbyists trying to bring joy to the world through their creative ventures, not make billions of dollars running a business. Caleb, that is beautifully said and almost heartbreakingly said. These are passion projects for a lot of people. And a passion project that isn't just about the creator, but also about the joy that we are trying to provide to people in the US and around the world. That's why Stonemaier Games exists. That's why we continue to exist. And I think that's the case for a lot of people in the game industry and beyond. And I know that Stonemaier Games would not exist were it not for Panda Game Manufacturing, which has their main factory in China. We could not have made viticulture here in the US, or it would have looked very, very different if we had made it in the US and probably been a lot more expensive. Jander says, who's going to work in all of these manufacturing plants? Isn't your unemployment relatively low? It is relatively low. I certainly have heard of a lot of people who want U.S. manufacturing, but not a lot of people who actually want to work in a factory. But I also think I think that any company can choose how they want to treat their employees. It's one of the reasons that we love working with Panda. Panda treats their employees around the world and including in their factory really well. I love working with companies that treat their employees well. And so while I think there is a case to be made for like who actually wants to work in these factories or who will work in these factories, but I think there is a possibility for any company, any facility to create a place that is a great place to work if they want to. And I think that is a challenge. That is a tough goal to sometimes achieve, but I think it is possible for someone to go into business with that goal. It is certainly my goal. Caleb says, one of the many things I love about you, Jamey, you're not just a greedy dragon chasing gold. You want to bring those awesome products to life so we can bring joy to the tables. Thank you, Caleb, for saying that. And yeah, that is absolutely right. Like money is what sustains a company and lets a company continue to exist. Money is also what keeps the lights on, that pays my coworkers. But I'm not in Stonemaier Games. I'm not here to get rich. I'm here to bring joy to you. I'm here to serve you. And it's really tough when something comes along like these tariffs that gets in the way of doing that. It's hard. Yeah. Oh, and Erwin points out that the machines are needed within the factories. Yeah, so in my recent blog post, I do try to talk a little bit about how there are already some U.S. manufacturers, at least within the board game space. They do exist. I haven't gotten quotes from any of them recently, despite reaching out to them. I think they're very busy right now, but I'm working on that. And I have reached out to them in the past as well. But you're right. For new manufacturing, you need machines. And where are those machines made? They're often made in China because China has focused so strongly on manufacturing. And also materials costs. And those machines currently are subject to tariffs as well, as are materials. So even if you wanted to print a game in the US and make the custom dice in China, where you can actually make them at scale and make them well at scale, those dice, if you brought them into the US, are subject to the tariffs too. Lower than an entirely new game, but still, the tariffs don't carve out anything for encouraging the first steps into better improving the manufacturing, increasing manufacturing here in the U.S. Richard says it well too. We're moving into a technology era. Why are we trying to go back to the industrial age? I mean, I think we'll always be, I think the industrial age will somewhat continue forever. We will always be making things, but we're making them in different ways than we made back in the industrial age, the original industrial age, at least. All right, I've got a little bit over time here today, but I think I've gotten all the questions at least. I appreciate you all joining me today for this live cast, for your time. I really do appreciate that. And if you have any questions that come up later, feel free to put them in the comments, especially on the YouTube channel. I see them the most easily that way. I hope you have a great day. I haven't talked about treat of the day. Treat yourself to something today. Find joy in something in your day because you deserve it, and I hope you have it. I hope you have that joy. Take care. Have a great day. I'll see you next week.